Hello, I'm Katie Steele, Southwest Climate Hub Coordinator and Director of the ARID Project at New Mexico State University.
And I'm Tanya Burnett, the Education and Outreach Specialist at the National Drought Mitigation Center in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And I'm Julie Elliott, here today to walk you through the current GrassCast maps for the Southwest. I recently retired from the Natural Resources Conservation Service as a rangeland management specialist.
There's a whole bunch of collaborators that make GrassCast possible, and the slide you can see is a quick tour of their logos.
We're going to discuss the GrassCast forecast for the Southwest, which includes New Mexico and Arizona. Just a reminder, GrassCast is a tool that gives you grass growth forecast for the growing season. And when you go to the tool, you'll see 3 maps. Each map considers a different weather pattern for the growing season. Julie will be explaining how to best pick which map works for your location. But first, Katie will give a quick overview of the long lead weather forecast for the Southwest.
So let's take a look at the seasonal precipitation outlook for August, September, and October 2023. And it's still pretty bleak. We're looking at a 30 to 40% chance, or even a 40 to 50% chance of leaning below average precipitation for much of New Mexico and Arizona. By itself, this doesn't say a whole lot. We might see some pockets where we get a good monsoon, but overall, the precipitation outlook is not looking all that positive for Arizona and New Mexico. If we take a look at the temperatures, that low precipitation is also combined with a high probability of about 50 to even 70% of above normal temperatures, which is hardly surprising since that's what we've been through for the last month. Combined, when you look at this low precip and high temperature scenario, it's not looking all that positive for grass growing conditions. But don't forget that GrassCast forage predictions also count on how much rain has fallen to date. So Julie will lead us through a bit more of an explanation about how this works and which GrassCast map might work best for your location.
Before we dive in, those of you in eastern New Mexico will want to consider what type of growing season you have. Do you have a continuous growing season from spring until fall, or do you have 2 distinct growing seasons, a spring and a summer, with virtually no overlap between the spring grasses and the summer grasses? If your growing season is continuous, you want to find the Southern Plains video on this YouTube channel. If you have 2 distinct growing seasons, then this is your video.
Julie, I'm curious, how have the summer growing season conditions been so far for the Southwest?
In a word, terrible, Tanya. All but a few small areas in Arizona and 3/4 of New Mexico have seen less than 50% of the 1980 to 2022 precipitation since June 1st. The 2 areas of exception we saw last week in northwest Arizona and northeast New Mexico have shrunk considerably, especially in Arizona. Northeast New Mexico has some lucky folks that have still seen 100% of the summer average precipitation or better, with expected rains of less and less as we come out. The yellow areas are near the average, with green hues above and orange to red below. While GrassCast is not as gloomy as the precipitation maps, the forecast is still steadily being downgraded. Here are the 3 GrassCast maps. And if the monsoons should suddenly appear, the above average maps still have quite a bit of blue in them, indicating a forecast of above average production compared to the long-term expected production. But bearing outstanding rain, the forecast looks pretty worrisome for most of the Southwest.
Thanks, Julie. Can we have a look at each map individually?
Absolutely, Katie. If the rains start coming again and the summer ends up being above average, GrassCast expects about 1/3 of Arizona and most of eastern New Mexico to see above average production, as indicated by the blue colors. This is a sharp contrast to 2 weeks ago, when pretty much all of Arizona and New Mexico were projected to see above average production with above average rainfall. But then and now, Eddy County, still in the epicenter of drought conditions with summer grass losses that are projected to be as much as 15 to 30% of production, as indicated by the orange color here. The yellow area represents a 5 to 15% loss in production. Much more of the Southwest is forecasted to have near average production, even with above average precipitation, as indicated by the green colors. Blues indicate above average production, as I mentioned earlier.
I remember seeing a lot of orange in the middle map, or near average precipitation. Wasn't there a lot of yellow in the middle map a couple weeks ago, Julie?
You remember correctly, Tanya. It's going to take a very good monsoon season to correct the huge precipitation deficit that the Southwest has accumulated this summer. The blue and most of the green shading from the previous forecast is virtually erased, except for a few very lucky areas that are relishing in well above average precipitation accumulation. Not surprisingly, Eddy County, who isn't good even with above average precipitation, falls into serious production deficit zone of 30% or more with near average precipitation. But they're not alone. Large areas in Arizona and New Mexico also facing 30% or more less production. There is massive amount of country in the 15 to 30% loss category, as indicated by the orange, and the yellow of 5 to 15% loss overruns much of the previous near average production predictions from last forecast.
So things are really looking bleak, even if we have the rest of the year with average precipitation. I can only guess what it's going to look like if we carry on being a dry monsoon this year.
No one's going to be surprised to hear that if the monsoons don't come through, the Southwest is going to see a deep loss of summer grass production. Even the areas that have seen above average precipitation so far this summer slide back significantly, with still only the northeast corner of New Mexico still holding on to near or even above average production with below average future precipitation. 5 to 15% loss to 30% loss or more categories just overrun the state and all the rest of the Southwest area. Now, remember, these are forecasts. So each of you needs to consider the current precipitation trend, the health and productivity of your rangeland, and other information sources before you take any drastic actions. Those of you in the areas where a loss is predicted, even in near average conditions, might want to be paying a whole lot closer attention to your rangeland. Most of you really are past the making a plan stage, should be well into implementing it. And that plan is not hoping for rain.
Thank you so much, Julie, for the updates. Just a quick reminder, GrassCast is forecasting total production, not grazable production. When a loss is expected, the grazable production loss will be significantly more than the total production lost. When an excess is expected, one needs to consider if that excess will be made up of grass species that are tasty to animals and when they might be tasty.
Thanks, Tonya. Go to grasscast.unl.edu, or to find that website, just type GrassCast into your favorite search engine. Click on the Southwest button to find the maps you've seen here today. And on that website, you can also access a zoomable feature that will let you see more specific information about your area, including how much loss or gain in forage you might expect, how much precipitation GrassCast believes you have received so far this season, and how much is expected for each of the 3 scenarios. There are also several videos and tutorials that help you interpret the map. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Tonya.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.